Okay, here we go. Day 7, we're looking at factoring completely. The first thing I wanted to kind of go over was this quick table chart. It's actually a flow chart of factoring. So if you wanted to pause this and write this in your notes, that would be a good idea. Every trimester that we have this topic, we always put this up on the board several times. So for factoring completely, step 1 is always going to be look to factor a GCF. Okay, so we always want to see if we can factor a GCF first. And that's how we're going to start out today with all 5 questions. From there, you could have, inside the parentheses, you could have 2 terms, 3 terms, or 4 terms. That's what we're going to have. If it's 2 terms, the only option is going to be to go to difference of squares, which is one of our special cases, like we talked about on day 6. 3 terms, we're going to have 2 things that could happen. We could either do, if A is 1, we can just multiply A times C, get to the answer. If A is not 1, this is the one that is the most amount of work because we have to, after you factored out a GCF possibly, we have to do A times C and then we have to do factor by grouping from the table. So we can't skip to the answer like you can with that. This is the shortest one. And then last, if you have 4 terms, you can group them 2 by 2 and go ahead and just do grouping. You don't have to do A times C there. So if you want to pause this and put this in your notes, I know it's not perfect, but this has everything that you might need for our factoring unit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and erase that so we can get started. Some of these still go pretty quick depending on what kind of factoring you're going to have to do. So today's going to also not only a good review, well, obviously factor completely, but also a good review of just factoring in general. So here we go. Number 1, 2x squared minus 200. All right, rule number 1, we always look for a GCF right off the bat. So look at the smallest number. Does 2 go into that? Yes, it does. So we can factor out a 2. When we do that, we're left with x squared minus 100. Now we just did factoring special cases. So hopefully you recognize this, but the whole thing about factoring completely is that you're not finished until you have everything completely factored. So we're going to be able to break this up one more time, just like we did on factoring. If we only look at this, like if you ignore the 2 for a second, this was like a question we had yesterday. So we're going to have x and x plus and minus and the square root of 100. Now we can do this because it's a perfect square. We get 10 there. So 2 times x plus 10 times x minus 10. So always double check, is there anything else I can do with that one? There's not, so you can stop right there. Okay, so there's number 1. Feel free to pause at any spot if you feel like I'm going too fast. I try to keep going quickly on the videos so that it doesn't get too lengthy. I try to keep everything to 10 minutes or less if possible, but the more I talk, the more we go over 10 minutes. So, all right, here we go. This one, x to the 4th minus 81. All right, so this one, we look for a GCF. There's not a GCF, so sometimes you're not going to have a GCF right away. But we do definitely have difference of squares. So we take the square root of x to the 4th. Our rule for exponents is that if we're taking the square root, just cut it in half. So we've got x squared and x squared. We got plus and minus because 81 is a perfect square. We get 9 and 9. Now why is this one thrown in with factor completely stuff? Well, because this part's good, but what about this? If I were to cover this up, x squared minus 9, that's just like what we did yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever it was you did this one. So we get x squared plus 9. This one cannot change, but this one, okay, like I said, if you forget about this, right, x squared minus 9, we've got x and x plus and minus, and the square root of 9 is 3. Okay. Now once we get to here, once the x's are 1s, we can't go any further with that. So this is our answer in order to be factored completely. All right? So there's number 2. Sometimes it happens like that. You can have 3 groups. It's not always going to be 2 parentheses boxes in your answers. So that one is, that's a unique one that only happens because of difference of squares. So that's the difference of squares factor completely stuff. Let's go ahead. Now we're going to see a trinomial. We got 3x squared minus 15x minus 72. Okay, so step 1, like it was on the table earlier, we want to look to factor a GCF first because you could do 3 times negative 72, But if possible, we'd rather stay away from some of those large number questions or factor tables. So we get, does 3 go into all of these? Yes, it does. So we factor out a 3, and we do this. So we divide by 3 everywhere, and we end up with 1x squared minus 5x and minus 24. So isn't this, so this now is a lot easier to factor. So this 3 is going to stay as part of our answer. So a lot of times I just tell students to keep it out here until we get to the answer, whatever it ends up being down here at the end. Now because this is a 1, that makes it quite a bit easier, because now we don't actually have to do factor by grouping, because the 3 we just leave out. We multiply a times c inside here. Okay, so we're looking at factors of negative 24. We got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So which of those is going to combine to 5 by subtraction? It's going to be the 3 and the 8. Now it's negative 5, so that means the larger, all these largers from this column would be what we're going to be negative. So they're going to match up signs over there. So 3 minus 8, that is negative 5. So because a was 1, we can just go x plus 3, x minus 8. And there is our completely factored answer. Okay? So if at any point you have questions or you need me to slow down, obviously you can just pause the video now, unlike in class, where you would ask a question. Just pause the video. You can send me an email, send me a Canvas message, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Any time of the day, I try to check that. So, all right, here we go for number 4. Moving right along. 10x squared plus 45x. This one was plus 20. All right, so again, we could do 10 times 20 and look at factors of 200, but then at the end, you would have something you needed to try to factor out to make it factored completely. So does 10 go into everything? 10 does not. All right, so if 10 doesn't work, we do want to try half of 10. Okay, half of 10 is 5. Does 5 go into everything? Yes, it does. So we can factor a GCF out of this. So we factor out the 5 everywhere. When we do that, we get 2x squared, we get plus 9x, and we get plus 4. Okay, so in some cases we might be done, but what we got to check is, can we factor this now? Well, the 5 is going to stay as part of our answer, whatever that ends up being down here. That's what I showed you last time. But this time, because a is not 1, we have to do a times c, and we're going to have to do factor by grouping. It's unavoidable here. So we get positive 8. So we got 1 and 8, 2 and 4, 3 doesn't work. So which of those will combine to 9? The 1 and the 8 will work. So this time we can't put x plus 1 and x plus 8 because of the 2. We need it to be 2 times that. So we have to split this up and go factor by grouping. So 2x squared plus 1x plus 8x plus 4. So this is very good review. We do factor by grouping here. So these have an x in common. So we pull the x out here. We're going to get x into that. We get 2x. X into that one, we get plus 1. Over here, 8 and 4, the 4 works into both. So we put plus 4. 4 into 8, we get 2x. 4 into 4, we get plus 1. So we've got what we want. We got like terms. So the x and the plus 4 go here. The 2x plus the 1 goes there. And then don't forget the 5. That's why I like to draw an arrow and write it out here. This ends up working out and being our answer. Okay? So really, once you take out the 5, this is like the questions we did the other day, but don't forget to put it as part of your answer there at the end. Okay? And this one is a lot. This is the one that takes the most because you factor GCF, then you got to do a times c and factor by grouping. So a lot going on in number 4. We got one more to go here. All right, last one, number 5. For this time, we have 4x squared minus 32x. We have minus 12x plus 96. Okay, so even when we have 4 terms, so we know if there's 4 terms, it's probably going to be factor by grouping. Even though these are like terms, we don't want to combine them right now because then we have to turn around and do what we just did with factor by grouping to split them up. So we look for a GCF. Now 4 is the smallest number, so we test it first. 4 goes into 32. 4 goes into 12. 4 actually goes into 96. Use your calculator to help you out here. So 4 into 96 is actually 24, and I try to put that on the home page. Has the link to the Desmos calculator you guys can use online to help you out as we go with this. All right, so 4 works. Now we got this big parentheses box, so we're going to divide all these. I'll write them all out this time. So we divide everything by 4, and then when we do that, we get 1x squared minus 8x. We get minus 3x, and we get 4 into 96 is plus 24. Okay, so this 4, again, you can just basically ignore it for a minute. It is going to be a part of our answer, so don't forget that. I will go ahead and write it down here. Now, is there a chance this might not work and this could be our final answer? It might. That could happen. Right? So we do factor by grouping. This one has an x in common. So we factor out the x. Don't forget to divide this into both of these. So we get x minus 8. This one has a 3 in common. However, when there's a negative in the middle, means we probably, or not probably, we do want to factor out a negative 3 right there. So when we do that negative, we get a positive 1x, so it matches up there. Negative 3 into that, we get minus 8. And so now we've got these like terms that we wanted. Okay, and we're close to our answer here. We end up with x minus the 3. Okay, and the like terms, x minus the 8. And there's our answer. Okay, so that's going to wrap things up for today. Hope things are going well for you guys. Hope everybody's staying healthy and doing the best we can to do our part here to hopefully this will be over sooner than later. Hang in there with this, guys. You know, I know this is kind of unprecedented, but you know, do the best you can with the math work. You know, with all your classes, do your best to keep up. Really, right now, it's about understanding and just keep moving forward. And we'll do the best we can with this to keep you guys updated with material. So thank you very much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.